Welcome back to the Raising Our Vibration podcast, where we explore higher consciousness through spiritual practice. Today, Stephen and I are going to explore being aware of being aware. So awareness itself. And you could say that being aware is the goal or the end of meditation in a certain sense. It's all the steps that we do in meditation to relax and align our posture and turn inwards, feel inner sensations, practice mindfulness, paying attention on purpose, concentrating into absorption. Those are all to train attention, and so that we can recognize and realize awareness itself. So those are all important steps. And it seems like this is the sticking point. This is what gets sticky. People can't quite get onto awareness itself. And that's because being aware of awareness itself is not like being aware of any object. Okay. Awareness is that which enables objects to appear. So if you pick something in front of you and you have arrow of attention and you're looking at it, you are looking at an object and you're becoming aware of something outside of you. Awareness itself, as the essence of who you are, is closer than close. It's not out here. It's not something you can look out and say, oh, there it is, and I can describe what it is. It's not an object. It can't be described. Our language is set up on the idea of describing objects out there and objective reality. So how do we describe something that's not an object, that which is pure subjectivity, that which is what enables this world of appearances and objects and experiences to arise? So traditionally, there's three ways that you can go about this. One is to say what it is not. Okay, so we said it's not an object. Okay, it's not something out there that you're looking at or looking for, and you can find it and describe it. So it's not an object. It's also not a location. It's not somewhere you go. It's not somewhere you arrive at. So a lot of times in meditation, we have the idea, oh, I'm going to be in awareness. I'm going to go somewhere. Now I'm in awareness. And before I wasn't, now I am. I'm in it. I'm in this location called awareness. It's not a location that you're being in. In fact, every moment you are in awareness, so to speak, because you are awareness. It is awareness that is shining light on everything that appears. You would experience nothing if you weren't awareness shining light on those objects and experiences that appear. So it's not a location. It's also not a state. It's not a state that you get to. So, we put on our EEG headsets and we're following our meditation cues, and we're seeing when we look at our graphs of that, we can say, oh, I was in this alpha dominant state, or this theta dominant state, or this gamma dominant state. Awareness itself is not a state. A state is also something that it's like an object. It's something you have cues that you focus on, and then you rest as that. You kind of become that state. Awareness is not a state. It's that which knows the states that we're in. Okay, so it's prior to states, locations, and objects as that within which all these appear. Okay, so those are some things it's not. You can also say what it's like. Okay, so Rupert Spira, in his beautiful book, Being Aware of Being Aware, talks about awareness itself like a movie screen upon which the play of life or the movie of life is playing. So the screen itself does not change, but the images and characters and so on that come across the screen are ever changing, okay? But that which, upon which these appear, awareness itself, the screen, is behind all of this, so to speak. And it is stable and unchanging. Okay, so it's like a movie screen. You could also, a metaphor we've used a lot, or analogy we've used a lot, is it's like the open, clear sky. Okay, you can think of clouds floating by as like our thoughts, feelings, experiences, and so on, but they appear within the sky. They're a part of the sky, but the open, clear sky doesn't change behind all that. No matter how many clouds come in and obscure our view of the sky, which is kind of like what happens when we can't find awareness. It's just we're caught up, we're seeing all the clouds and we're identifying with them. We're not realizing the open, clear sky behind it. And then a third analogy that's often used is awareness itself is like an ocean. Okay, and our sense of individuality or an individual thought or feeling or experience is like a wave in the ocean. And the waves are a part of the ocean. They're an effect of the ocean. They are brought about by movement of the ocean, but the ocean itself is more than the waves. It's that which underlies and gives life to the waves. Okay, and if you go deep down into the ocean where it's still and silent, you can sense the ocean itself prior to the waves. Okay, so those are some analogies that we can use. And then the third way that you can start to get at what awareness is by pointing to it through instruction. And so we're going to do a little bit of that to give you an experiential pointing that gives you a felt sense of awareness. So with that as a prelude, I'll pass it over to you, Stephen, and guide us into a pointing and maybe some stories that illustrate that.
Kevin, thank you, and love and blessings always to everybody who's listening on this beautiful day. So, yeah, awareness itself, right? As you said, Kevin, it's very sticky for people to not make that an object. That it's such hard work because we're so trained, like you said so wisely, that our very language sets up everything as objects, and we are actually, you could say, we're trained from our very earliest days to set up goals and set up things that are outside of ourselves that we're trying to get. We're trying to get a job, we're trying to get money, we're trying to find what perfect health is. Where is heaven's somewhere up there. Where's everything is the whole way that society is structured. The whole matrix seems to be formed around this idea of subject object rather than awareness itself. So I'm going to give a couple of examples which might really help you, and they're very simple. They're both from two very lovely people in my life, Kevin. One, well, of course you are, and so is everybody listening. And another one of them is my daughter, who's 7. And another one of them is a good friend who's known to us both, who's a very wise, I call her a wise Dakini. So she's exploring the realms of awareness itself. And I'm going to use them more or less in the same story, because my daughter was tidying up her room. So you just got to put this in context, something really easy, right? You're going to tidy up your room. So kind of your life is a bit like that. You got to tidy it up. If your life is full of too much input and too many things and too many objects, well, it's going to be just that much harder to see the wood for the trees, so to speak. And our good friend was also asking me a similar question, more or less about tidying up awareness itself. And that is that she wanted to know how you would get from the forest to the castle, where the castle is you're overlooking everything and the forest is the trees. Now, of course, this is how most people perceive it. So I think she came up with a brilliant analogy, and Kevin and I are going to actually tip you upside down, because that's what we perceive. What tends to happen, a bit like my daughter in her room, is that she wanted to get her room looking a particular way, and she thought there was going to be a point at which, at the end of the day, she's going to have the room tidied, it'll all be perfect, and she'd be as good as gold. And we kind of view our meditation and our awareness in the same way. In fact, we're not aware much at all, not aware of awareness much at all. We tend to have experiences in our life that are peak experiences. So these could be in a meditation, we suddenly have moments where we get a Kundalini strike, or we get a bliss opening up, or we drop into emptiness, or we get moments of incredible clarity, and we go, that's it. That's it. That's the castle, right? Boom. So immediately, without us even subtly or obviously recognizing it, we've got an object already. And we set up a lot of our meditation. Okay, I've got to get back to that. How do I do that? Now, I use that.
How do I get there, and how do I stay there? Right.
Yeah. How do I get there, and how do I
stay in the castle all the time?
Yep. That jolly forest down there. It's just too full of pickles and challenges and barrels and sticky tar. So I don't want to go down there. I'm going to stay in the castle. But how do I do this? 24/7. And so a good friend who asked this, and I think it's a brilliant analogy, because we do perceive it like that. And we want to go from the forest to the castle, and we want to stay in the castle, and we want to look down. So we think, okay, just like you said, Kevin, if I go there and I find out, okay, good. I'm now still or silent or spacious or clear or blissful or in constant Kundalini kind of power. Right. That's it. I've got it. Now, that's the trick, right? Is to actually recognize that that's not it, because we have already subtly, in doing that, we've set up locations, ideas, futures, goals, all the things that awareness isn't.
Just come up with more refined objects, right?
More
stillness is an object.
Silence
is an object. Space, wonderful analogy for awareness, but still an object.
Exactly. I always love being in Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche's retreat. He says this every time. He always goes, now be aware of silence, stillness, or spaciousness. Be aware. He said, not of the object. He said, trying to get to silence, stillness, or spaciousness is the obstacle. He always says this. He always says, if you're trying it, it's not that. It's just simply be aware. The whole secret to it is to be aware, to be more curious and interested about the knowing than about the object, the known. Be more curious about the process of what's unfolding, rather than getting to a place of stillness or silence where you're so silent that it feels like your world's wrong. Now, you might get to that point, absolutely.
And those can be skillful means. So
and there's
right,
like portals. Yeah, there's like skillful means or portals, but they are not. As soon as you make them the object, they become. Isn't it wild to think? As soon as you make it the object, it's an object. It's like it's almost pointing there. I always describe it as you've always got your nose flat up against the castle, but equally you've also got your nose flat up against the forest. You're actually,
or you are the castle.
You are the castle. Exactly. You become the castle.
So close, you can't realize you are the castle.
You are it.
You're looking all around for it, but you're living in it.
Exactly.
You are it.
You already are it. Exactly. So this was the recognition that both our good friend and Maya had. Maya had it in her room. So what happened? So to take the castle forest analogy and knowing you are it, that Maya had the same thing. We were tidying up her room, and what had happened? She had built a little series of platforms or locations, right, on our steps. And because there are steps going upstairs, it meant that every time grandma came, she tripped over them and nearly broke her ankle. And then every time I came down from doing something, there's an array of dolls and things. So we suggested, why don't we just take over this other spare room we've got in the house and we'll build it into your room, which she really loved. But when we went in there, there was a lot of stuff. There was a lot of input, in other words. You know, if I make that analogy with your life, it's like if you're going to say, right, I'm going to be curious about knowing awareness, or curious about being aware of awareness, and I'm going to watch the news all day because there's this stuff about Ukraine, and there's people, oh my God, I feel so terrible, and oh look, and now I'm out and I'm driving along the highway and these people are just getting on my nerves. You know, you just, and oh, okay, let's check my phone. Wait on, I've got so many messages. This is, you know, so of course, if you're living
no room, right? There's no space.
There's no
Right?
room.
That's where space and stillness and silence come in, right? They enable recognition.
Exactly.
Right? Because they give a space and an openness within which recognition can appear, rather than being consumed with objects or experiences.
Exactly. And that was exactly what happened to Maya. So we transferred all the things upstairs, and initially there was a lot of stuff in the room everywhere because we'd kind of used it as a temporary storage room. So there was a lot of stuff. So and she got really frustrated because there were just so many objects in her room. So this is often what happens to us in our day-to-day life. There's just so many things we've got to deal with. And so she got really upset. She kept saying, this is terrible. I don't want to do this. I don't want to clean. And so I just said to just be patient. I said, why don't you just slow down? Because she likes going a bull at the gate when she's got something in mind. She's got a very strong focus on it. Said, why don't you just slow down? Why don't we look at these objects, you know, a bit like Marie Kondo, you know, look at these objects, treat them with this spark of joy. If we're going to put them somewhere, we'll just kind of treat them like good friends. Just take them out slowly, and, you know, it's like compassionate tidying. Just kind of do it very gently and slowly. And there was a point, Kevin, and it was so amazing to watch her little eyes. There was a point at which suddenly, and this is what happens to us with overwhelm, because I quite often get with clients who say, I say, what's your experience of life like? Oh, it's just overwhelming, right? And then, so of course I help them declutter, to tidy up first. There's just basic things you've got to do first, like you said, create space or create stillness or create silence. So with Maya, I just sat with her really patiently, because she doesn't like doing it by herself either. She likes to have help. And there was a point at which, and I could even feel it, because we were doing it quite slowly, the differences between the space at different moments in the room were really quite obvious. And I removed, she had quite a big cardboard house in it. So the moment I took that out, of course, right in that middle, it left a kind of a vacant space. And then she looked at it and she sat down for a second, and she looked around. For the first time, she could actually see things. So what had previously been a clutter of objects now became actually pretty well defined. And then she suddenly got this smile on her face, and she started to tidy with a whole different consciousness. And she said, Dada, why is it so much? No, she said suddenly, Dada, why is it suddenly so much fun? You know, whereas before, up to that point. And I said, well, simply, you're experiencing the nature of awareness itself, because what you're doing is you've become more curious about the quality of being in this room, more than your frustration with the objects in the room itself. You've actually started to shift. She said, yeah. She said, I feel so free. You know, I feel, and she said, there seems like there's so much space. Now, she was talking about you know, there was, and I said, isn't it an aha? You know, and her eyes were kind of going, because she was kind of really deeply experiencing what it's like to be the castle, right? Because suddenly at that point, she recognizes her whole room as a castle. She thought that the castle was going to be, you know, to use this wonderful analogy of our friends, she thought the castle was going to be a point in time, whereas in fact, she was the castle. And she suddenly realized, oh, every moment has this, for her, this quality of fun, because she was now really turning into the knowing of experience and the knowing of objects, rather than the objects. When she was turned into the objects, they frustrated the hell out of it. And she got this little look on her face, which we call in Japanese onigunso, the lieutenant of the devil, when you just kind of can't kind of get things together and you just want to really punch things hard. And I'm sure everybody who's listening, you get to that frustration level in your life, right? When it seems like there are too many objects to deal with, there's just too much input. So that's when you are searching for the castle and the forest seems too thick, right? And you haven't realized that you are in fact the castle already, and you're already there. It's just a shift in view. It's just a shift in your actual
vantage point.
Exactly. And that's the key. So here's a little guide. So what Kevin and I are going to do together is we're going to shift. And so I'm going to do a little initial setup, and then Kevin will take you out beyond, and it'll just be a real simple setup of how to shift your vantage point. Just like Myron, just like our good friend who gave this wonderful analogy of the castle and the forest. So at the moment, we're actually going to start to become aware of the forest from the vantage point, which you always are, the castle itself, from awareness itself. So all I really want you to do with me for a few moments, so I'll do the first simple part and Kevin can take it from wherever I end up, is I just want you to close your eyes for a moment and just simply notice whatever you're aware of just this moment, whatever you're aware of in terms of, say, thoughts or sounds or sensations, perceptions. Just simply anything you're aware of. Don't make it difficult. You don't have to search for anything. You're just noticing that right now, if you're experiencing sound, then you're just aware of it. For example, right this moment in my room, I've got an air conditioner on, and it's a sound. It's blowing this. It's very gentle. I'm just simply aware of it. So I'm experiencing sound. Right? Equally, you might notice that you can be aware of whatever you're experiencing in your body. So right now, for example, I've just been out for my mountain bike ride, and so my legs are quite energized, and I particularly notice my knees because I played a lot of tennis. My knees are always very prevalent. And I just notice that. It's just okay. Just be aware. Because I'm guiding you a little, I can be aware of the fact that my voice is speaking. And there are thoughts flowing. There might be this simple thought of whatever I'm going to say next. So you might have a thought. I'll get you to have a thought that you can be aware of. You can be aware of your breakfast or your lunch or your dinner. Just notice what every single one of you is having a breakfast, lunch, or thought about your dinner now. And your thought is different and you're aware of it. You might have been like me and had Japanese food for breakfast, rice and beans and soup, or you might have had coffee. So notice that you're aware of it. It's so easy. It's just that. And you're listening. So you're hearing these words. I'm deliberately creating some space. Hearing these words. So you're aware of, maybe for the first time in the passage, of 3 words. Hearing these words. You're really aware of them. You might also start to become aware of where you tend to sense from your sensations. If you're more in your head right now, more in your heart, more in your belly. I tend to live from my heart. And at the same time as I'm aware of my heart, the moment I'm aware of my heart, I get this tingling and opening like a rush of wind in my crown. Happens nearly every time. So I'm just aware of that, aware of that sensation. There's no opinion, no judgment. It's just awareness. And gently, for a moment, I'm going to get you to open and close your eyes. And just gently for a moment. Open your eyes slowly and just notice what your eyes and your perception of sight does. So, for example, my sight, I have a particular coloring in my sight that I've noticed. It has a particular hue, which I'm aware of. And I'm aware that I'm looking at a wall on one of my daughter's paintings, and I'm simply aware of it. And some chairs. So just become interested in the knowing, right, of your experience. It's really quite amazing to slow down, just like cleaning out your room, to open up to a little bit of space in your life, to be curious enough to be interested in the knowing. And this is exactly what Kevin was saying. He was pointing that this is the vantage point. You're actually already in the castle. And you're aware of everything, the forest, the trees, the walls, the chairs, the objects in your room. Now, what you begin to see is that being aware or awareness itself accompanies every single one of your experiences. That being aware is the common element of all experience. You notice that everything that we know, so what's known, the objects or aware of, everything that we're aware of changes. If you notice that the thought, if you bring up another thought about your breakfast, lunch, or dinner, it'll be a little different than how you brought it up in the first place. And even now, if you sense into your room, you might focus on something different. In fact, even find something that you've never noticed before in your room. So I'm looking at one of my daughter's paintings today. I haven't noticed as much as the main one that she always displays. So everything we know and everything we're aware of changes, but the knowing, this being aware, remains the same throughout all our experience. So there's no other element of our experience that's like this, that creates a continuum that's just continuous throughout. You know that if you have a thought, if I ask you to bring up a thought of a friend now or a favorite pet, the thought will appear. It'll abide for a while, just like Kevin was saying, like a wave in the ocean, and then it will disappear. But before that thought, there was knowing or being aware. And while the thought arose, there was knowing or being aware. And when the thought vanishes, you're still aware. So the known, all our objects, even the body, our houses, all the things we do, they always change. But the knowing of that experience never changes. So Kevin's going to guide you now even more subtly, because I've given you a kind of an overview of the vantage point of being the castle, that you're actually always aware. You're always present to awareness. So Kevin's going to guide you even deeper into this subtle awareness of awareness itself.
Thank you, Stephen. So now, again, choose an object in your space, in your room, whatever space you're in, maybe something you haven't, as Stephen said, you haven't noticed before. And become aware of that. So you're directing the arrow of attention to that object. Are you aware of that? Yes, you are. You're aware of that. Now become aware of being aware of that. Be aware of being aware. Be aware of being aware. So now rather than the focus being on the object, focus is on the one who is aware, awareness itself. So let's try another object. Let's hold your hand out in front of you and just look at your hand. So be aware of your hand. So as you direct the arrow of attention to your hand, it really stands out from everything else. You've called it forth. It appears in awareness because you're attending to it, and everything else fades to the background. This is how all experience works. We attend to something and we relate to it in a certain way, and it appears, it arises in awareness. Now be aware of being aware. It's like being aware of the whole space around your hand and behind you and all around you. It's that within which your hand appears. That now you're knowing that which is aware, awareness itself. So as you're aware of awareness itself, notice how the hand kind of recedes and awareness all around it arises. You can feel this whole space of awareness around and through your hand and around and through you. It's all permeating, all pervading awareness. So now you can lower your hand and close your eyes. And be aware of sitting here. Are you aware of sitting here? Yes, you're aware of sitting here. Now be aware of being aware. Tune into being aware. Awareness itself. Set aside any content, any thoughts, any feelings. Set aside even the feeling of sitting here. Be aware of being aware without content, without objects. Inquire into awareness. Are there any boundaries or limits to awareness? No, it's boundless. Is there any beginning or end to awareness? No, it's timeless. Awareness itself, does it change? No, it's changeless. That which arises within awareness changes. Awareness itself doesn't change. So rest back as awareness. Boundless, timeless, open, free. That which you've been seeking is here, now. Deep peace, freedom, awareness. Very slowly begin to open your eyes. Be aware of being aware with eyes open. It's unmistakable. And what if you move through life in the light of this realization? In the light of this recognition? You are awareness itself. You are always in awareness. Every experience appears in awareness. You are vast, boundless awareness. It's not a state, it's not a place, it's not an object. Be aware of being aware. Thank you for your practice. Thank you, Stephen, for your guiding, for this discussion. Thank you all for joining us and listening and engaging with us. And if you'd like to explore more about meditation, awareness practice, subtle energy, and our community of practice, Raising Our Vibration, you can visit raisingourvibration.net. Bye for now. See you soon.